Good evening, everyone. Good morning, depending on what part of the world you are in. And thank you for joining us here at Mavericks in Faith and Culture. It's been a minute since we've been with you, and so many exciting things have happened in our nation. Uh, Before we get on to it, Kevin, will you lead us in a word of prayer?
Gladly. Let's bow. Father, we thank you and we praise you for this day, this time, and this wonderful season that you now have us in. We thank you that your grace and your mercies intervene for us in a powerful way in our recent elections. And we thank you for the new horizons, the new possibilities, and all that you have before us. Lord, we ask that you would superintend over our time together, that you would be glorified with our discussion, and that those that listen to this podcast live and or on a delay at some point in the future, that they will be blessed by what they hear. So we just give this time to you, and we give you all the praise, glory, and honor in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So, before we get into all the exciting things of our new president elect, we want to summarize or hypothesize, as you will, about what could have been had he not been elected. And as we were joking off camera, I would rather say she who is not worthy to be named. We will we will not say that anymore. It just hurts my mouth and my brain. So, guys, what are your thoughts on how would have things progressed? Do you think had Trump not won? Kevin, we'll start with you, and we'll go around our Hollywood square.
All right, all right. So the reason why this election was so critical that we stop the trajectory that we were on and go a different direction is multiple facets. The first major facet is globally we would have been absorbed into the Great Reset. And that's with the World Economic Forum, the IMF, Klaus Schwab, Noah Harari. The globalist elites would have been able to absorb America into that Great Reset, which we had already committed to subverting our sovereignty. So a lot of people, this missed a lot of people, but Biden had already said earlier in 2024 that he would suborn U.S. Constitution to the World Health Organization. And when that vote came up in May, he says, "Look, we're in a contentious election. We'll do it next year when either myself or Kamala is president." That's a fact. So he was going to do it in 2025. That means our U.S. Constitution, all the rights and privileges and innate natural rights, all of that would have been subordinated to the World Health Organization and the globalist cabals. So we prevented the whole globalist move, right? The other thing that we've done is we have actually prevented additional sex trafficking. So by way of actually securing our borders, the United States will no longer be the number one sex and human trafficker in the world at the moment. So at the moment, a lot of people are not aware, but the drug cartels are no longer, their number one commodity are humans
Mhm.
and children coming to and through America to be sold multiple times in multiple ways to others. That is what we call human and sex trafficking. And the United States is the number one importer and supporter by virtue of an open border of that kind of stuff. So that kind of evil would have persisted. The other thing that would have persisted and actually gotten worse is the level of our children being manipulated and brainwashed and deceived about sexuality and about the whole trans education movement. The trans education movement is a big movement within existing school, U.S. school and education policies or standards, and so that would have gotten worse, and our children would have continued to have been maligned and abused by way of our educational system. So those things right off top, in addition to rampant inflation that would have continued, and no budgetary controls. We saw that uh, the woman that was running against Trump had no budgetary control because Trump went through $1 billion in 3 months. 3 months, $1 billion, which comes out to about, I don't know, let's see, Neil is the resident brainiac, but I think that's about 30 or $3 million a day or something like that. And still bankrupted her entire budget, and actually still owes to this day a lot of DNC staffers. She's 20 million or so in the hole, and today those staffers were released with no severance and no money. They said, "Look, we're we're out of cash. We got to wait to fundraise at some point in the future so we can pay you guys." So if she can't do that on a small campaign budget, she would have been a disaster with trillions of dollars in GDP and other budgetary controls within the United States. So we really, escaped, in a big way from being decimated here in the United States.
We certainly did, Kevin. Can she legally ask for donations after the campaign has been suspended because she lost? That is a question.
I think she can,
It hasn't
because if it's a campaign that's ongoing, because she's going to run for governor, right, for California. So all that money, she can raise the money for the governor of California and then pay back.
I'm sorry, did you say she was going to run for
governor
a
of
political
California.
office?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Whether she makes it through the primaries or not depends on how much in favor she is with the California elites, which would be Governor Nuisance and his Governor COVID and his cabal there in Sacramento. But yeah, I think it would be very clear that she will run for governor.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see where it goes. See if there's any up and coming star that will compete against her. But she wants to walk right into it and be blessed with that role as a consolation prize.
Oh, so
Are
you
you
skedaddle out of
serious?
California in the nick of time.
I'll say.
Are you?
Oh man.
Wait, I'm sorry. You totally blow it on a national platform,
Yeah,
and then you're going to run for governor?
Because people in California are crazy. They are crazy. I mean, think about it. Back in 2010, you remember when the Tea Party was just taking offices everywhere around the country, even in left-wing states. Even in New York, they won some seats. But in California, nothing. Nothing. I mean, Tea Party was all over the place. California, nothing. California, I'm telling you, California is crazy. It's crazy.
Yep.
Oh boy. So California is what, the 5th largest economy
in the world
internationally? And,
internationally, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You know what? Kevin's gonna be like Rahab, in the wall, just hiding the spies when they come in, and when everything falls down, Kevin, you and your house will be safe. He's got those red umbrellas. By his house. He's all set. He is that is unbelievable. And before we move on to Trump, I really need to Kevin, you got to tell us more about the World Health Organization, because I remember reading it that Trump was pulling us out, right? And I saw people were like, oh, why would we ever do that? Are you serious about submitting ourselves to what you said? That please repeat that again, because I don't think people caught that. I didn't. Say it again, please.
So the World Health Organization had a meeting in May, and the U.S. at that point was supposed to sign on, because there's a lot of other countries that have signed on that the World Health Organization can declare a pandemic for their country or for other countries, and they would they could take over their economy, they can take over their businesses, they could shut down the entire country, they can do whatever they want. The World Health Organization, a globalist, diabolical organization, can take over, can basically decide who the winners and losers in the globe are.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the US was going to sign on to that, but because it's an election year, Biden said we're not going to vote on this year. Next year, next May, we'll vote on it and sign on it, because either I'll be president or Kamala will, and we'll do it next year. But this is an election year, so we can't do it.
Yeah, and part of that
But
is
that's
that
what safe now.
yeah,
Trump
part of
will
that is
never
that
sign.
the U.S. cannot subordinate itself to a treaty without the Senate. But the worry was that there were enough, because the Senate was under control of the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
The worry was, okay, so the Senate will vote for it too, right?
It would have
Wow.
been majorly catastrophic, majorly.
Wow. Wow. As we transition, I was reading or glancing through an article written by, I think it was Dennis Prager, and I so much agreed with him. The title was that he was glad, he thought it was a good thing now that Trump didn't get elected in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
because we
Absolutely.
may not truly have seen
Mm-hmm.
the diabolical plans. We just would not have seen the ugliness that was underneath within liberal and progressive policies. We never,
Absolutely.
would have noticed it. And it is just a beautiful, we don't, the way that God works, right? We don't always understand it. And I remember too, I wasn't in the country, but I remember, all the prophecies, and everyone was like, Trump is going to get a second term,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things. And it didn't happen then. And we just crashed, where some people were able to say, you know what, he's going to come back. And
Mm-hmm.
I am grateful for those 4 years, although, a lot of horrible things have happened. People have lost their lives. The borders, and the immigration have really done a number on our country. And we just did an article about the rise in tuberculosis in this
Yes.
Yeah.
country because of immigration. So if you've not seen that, go visit our website. So, yeah, like, wow, amazing.
They used
Um,
to check people for tuberculosis all the way back in the 1800s, and that's why they
Yep.
had Ellis Island, right? That was a hospital to put tuberculosis people in there for quarantine to make sure that they didn't have TB when they came to the U.S. And now
wow.
for us to abandon that whole concept is, there's a saying that, if you see a fence, you don't take it down. You first ask, why was this fence put
Why
up?
was it put there?
You take
Yes.
it down, right?
Mm,
And this administration has removed so many fences, literally,
mhm,
that have been there for centuries without ever asking why was this fence up.
mhm,
And one of them is the TB
mhm,
fence. The other one's illegal immigration. I mean, reality is, why is California? I told you California was crazy. Here in California, when you sign up to get your driver's license, they give you a voter's registration form, and you fill it
mhm,
out, and they'll put you on the voter rolls, right? And there's no, they'll say, and who knows how they're being advised on how to check on, am I a U.S. citizen? Because you're not supposed to fill it out if you're not a U.S. citizen. But why are they doing that? Why were they filling a lot of these states with, especially swing states, with illegal immigrants? Why? Because they want to take over that entire state. If you could bring in 1 million illegal immigrants into a Wisconsin or pick your state, that's a
mhm,
guaranteed. All these guys are going to be voting for you because you're the ones who are going to give them daily bread. They're going to vote for you forever, at least for the next 2 generations, right? In which case, America will never, ever have a fair election because they're all being voted by illegals. And I say
And
that
that
as
is
an immigrant.
Now,
and that is something.
most people would fight back and say, "Well, I mean, come on, immigrants can't vote; it's against federal law, blah blah blah." But the reality is there's many states now that do not check ID. They
Well,
do
not
not
allowed
have,
to check
mhm,
ID.
a lot of them
Well,
don't. But
California is one of them.
and here's the tell about this last election: all of those states that had no ID requirement for voting Kamala won.
That she should
All the
who
states.
is not deserved to be named. One.
Yeah, yeah, she won.
Mm-hmm.
She won all
Mm-hmm.
those states that had no ID requirements. Everybody
Yeah.
that has some level of identification and adjudication back to the individual American citizen, all those states Trump won. So you can see the game. The game is being played. So let as many immigrants in as we can get here. Ultimately, our states will vote to eliminate any ID requirements, and we'll be able to maintain power in perpetuity.
Wow.
And good. And the concept that you could have someone who's not a U.S. citizen vote in U.S. elections is completely befuddling. Because think about it: if we let people who are not U.S. citizens vote in U.S. elections, what's to stop the Chinese from sending in, 10 million people and taking over the country with their people?
Yeah.
Hey, let's just
Right.
let's take over this city, this city, this city, this city. Hey, we're in control now. What stops you from letting? I mean, it's called a moral hazard. There's nothing to prevent somebody from doing something evil. Here's the problem with a lot of liberals is they don't believe in the sin nature of man, and so they assume the best of every person, even though it's right in front of their face. I mean, what other idiot would have a law that says if you steal up to $900, you're not going, I mean, up to $999, you're not going to go to jail. Well, guess what you get? You get people stealing. In fact, the reports of these guys going around with calculators, making sure
Yeah.
that they steal under $999 and walking out the store and saying, hey, I'm stealing from you. Have a nice day. But
Yep.
it's under $1,000. So good. And now, of course, California overthrew that in the recent election. So there's some brains in California, not all.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
have
but
whole
who is the idiot that passed it in the first place? I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
That's probably the only state that she who is not worthy to be named could even
Could run.
go,
Oh,
and be
absolutely. Yeah.
worshipped. Yeah.
I mean, come on. She walked into the DA's role. She walked into the senator's role. She was assigned those roles. So now, as I said, the only question whether she will be governor or not is does she still have favor with the people pulling the strings? That's the only thing that will decide whether she wins or not.
Wow.
Because California still doesn't have voter ID.
Right. Right.
All right. Okay. Let's get into Trump. Now, before we start talking about this, one of the things that I learned this week, which I didn't know, was because there had been such uproar about cabinet members, I didn't realize that, or wasn't really clear that cabinet members really don't make policy, right? Because that had been some of the argument is people are like, how could these people get on, all the policies that they're going to set, and we're just upset. And then when I went and studied it, and I think I heard some commentary on it on Fox News, but it's like they don't set policy.
No.
They only enforce,
They're the
or they
executive branch.
provide testimony, or they advocate for, but they don't set policy. So it's still going to be Trump, and it still has to be approved by Congress, right? So we don't bypass any checks and balances, right? Because some people, I was purposely watching, CNN, MSNBC, things like that, to just hear what's going on, how they're doing on the other side. And they're freaking out. Like our country is just, once you put these people on cabinet, somehow they have all these magic wand powers, and whatever they want is going to be implemented. So just in case you weren't aware, cabinet members do not set policy. All right.
There's
Yeah.
a little bit of a
here's
caveat.
where it does count, though. Here's where it does count. Cabinet members are the executive branch. They don't set policy, but however, they can choose to not enforce certain laws. So
Okay.
because they can say, oh no, I'm going to focus on this. I'm supposed to do that, but hey, don't do anything about it. Right. So that's where they're dangerous. They can, and I would love to see a law that says that a private citizen can sue the government or the federal government or a cabinet member for breach of contract or something. I'll come up with the right name for it because they did not enforce laws equally or certain laws that were considered more important. You'd have to figure out how to phrase it. But the reality is they could, like, for instance, why wasn't the Department of Homeland Security not enforcing the border? Right.
Oh,
But that's
okay. Mm-hmm.
right. So they can't make new laws, but they can kind of close an eye to some of the laws that they're not enforcing. Bill Clinton did that many times when he was president. Executive branch, I'm going to focus on some things, but not on other things. So
Okay.
The one cabinet member that is a wild card, though, he doesn't set policy, but he can enforce certain things, and that would be Matt Gaetz as an AG. I mean, he can go after the deep state in a way that has everybody up in arms, because he can go after the secrets of the FBI, CIA, national intelligence. He can go anywhere and everywhere as an attorney general, and he can do his own investigations. These are not policy, but they're deep, very intense investigations into existing departments within the U.S. government, and then of course outward too. But his focus is going to be inward because of all of the duplicitous chaos that's been wrought against Trump and others over the past decade or so. And so he can
Do
go
you?
after all of those secrets without any restrictions. So that's why so many people are freaking out about him, because now.
Mhm. Yeah, I was going to ask that, because of all you said it was a wild card, but of all the people, he has brought up the most conversation, even they're talking about within the Republican Party. And at first I was, really thinking about this. And then I was like, but if you need someone who doesn't care what even his own party thinks to be able to dig deep into
Yep.
what's going on, right?
Yep.
You need to have a person who really has the tough skin, who kind of has this, I don't care. This is
Right.
what I'm going to do. And again, he still is at the pleasure and the service of the president, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like he's a dog off leash.
right.
He is very much on leash and can be and will be controlled should need be. But, the idea that he is immune to popularity within his own party,
That's right.
that might be the person that I want looking at the FBI and the deep state
Yeah.
and really going
Not
after
only
the
his own
swamp.
party, but other members, high-ranking members in the party. Because a
Yep.
lot of politics is all tit for tat. Hey, do this for me and I'll make sure I'll do this for you, kind of thing. I'll make sure you have this position or that position when you come back to Congress, or, or I'll get you on the board of Lockheed or Boeing, hey, so,
Yeah.
and we'll get a war started in Ukraine. Oh, wait. Oh, is that what you're doing? Okay. We'll figure that out. Right. So there is you've got to get people who are not only, and it goes back to the Exodus 18 passage, which says, find men who fear the Lord and hate dishonest gain.
Yeah.
And I believe I pray, from what I've heard about Matt, he's definitely one of those. So I could be wrong, but all the indications are that's him.
Would Ted Cruz have been a good choice also? Or was it
I think Ted Cruz would be a good choice.
I met him a couple times, and
but Ted Cruz, though, to be honest, Ted Cruz has lost some of his fire.
Yeah.
Matt's a kind of younger, more fierce Ted Cruz in a sense.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, Ted Cruz is not. He wouldn't be a uniparty compromise guy, but he would not go hard like Matt Gaetz does. Matt Gaetz has a real axe to grind. They tried to set him up.
Oh yeah, they tried to get him targeted they targeted him and said he was a pedophile, right?
Yep.
Right.
All lies, complete lies.
So he can go after that in a big way, expose
In fact,
expose the inner workings.
I'm glad they went after him, because now he's going to go after the same people who tried to get him, right?
Yeah.
And they should.
Wow.
So there's some
and
real...
I want to make something clear here. I want to make something here clear. So we're talking about, is Trump going to seek retribution? And I wanted to make, and this is something that somebody needs to tell Trump, to say, look, I'm not going to seek retribution, but I am going to seek justice.
Yes.
Yep.
And if by justice you get retribution because I have exposed your evil deeds, then call it what you want. But I am going to seek justice. So don't sit there and say, I'm not going to go after this evil person because he attacked me. I mean, just because somebody attacked me doesn't mean that now you're off limits for me. No, no, no. If you attacked me and you did something evil, I'm coming after you. Not because of me, but because of America. Because we can't have those people running the country.
Yeah.
We can't have those people in power. And we've got to expose it. We've got, I mean, here's the deal. And here's the other thing that I think that Trump needs to do. I think he needs to go out there and say, look, for 4 years, America was doing well. And then for 4 years, in 4 years, Biden not only destroyed America, but he made it worse than it was than when I left it. So how do we now create a system of government that will prevent a bad or a rogue president from undermining it? That's what we have to understand. What is that system of government that would prevent a rogue government from undermining it? And a lot of that means that the president has to give up power and send it back to the legislature. The reality is the president is way too powerful today. He's way too powerful because we've seen that with Biden. He's destroyed the country. Even though we had the House, he destroyed the country. How can he do that when the lawmaking branch is in our hands? We had the House, and yet he was able to destroy the country. That should never happen again. If we are going to destroy the country, it has to be from the legislators who do stupid things. Because you know what? The legislators are elected every 2 years, and they're personally responsible to us. So that's one of the first things he has to do is figure out how do we stop the next, in my book, I say, in the book, who's Jesus is involved in politics, I said, remember, any power that a good president has, an evil president will also have.
Yeah.
That's a conversation to have. You need to write something on that, Neil.
Yeah,
And
I do.
maybe we will. And maybe we will be producing some things about that to be talked about later.
By the
Lonnie,
way,
anything you want to add?
the one thing I want him to do is I wanted him to make Ron Paul the Secretary of the Treasury.
Oh,
I don't know if he's announced who it is yet. Has he?
No.
I don't remember.
Nope.
Yeah.
No treasury
We
yet.
should petition that he makes Ron Paul the Secretary of Treasury.
that would be interesting.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
Or he should make the other guy, what's his name? One of our friends. He wrote the Pirate Money book. He does the show on Blaze. Gosh, what's his name? Kevin. It's a Kevin. I think his first name is Kevin. I'll look it up. But he wrote the book Pirate Money, and it's all about how. And he ran this whole law in Texas and the embargo, which made gold legal tender in Texas. Now I don't know if it got passed or not, but that was the law they were attempting to pass, and it made gold legal tender. So that means you can't be taxed on gold. You can use gold for your day-to-day financing, and you can choose not to use the U.S. dollar. You can use gold instead. Right?
Well, I tell you, with him being appointed, that would certainly make the Federal Reserve nervous.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Who
I
are
like
some
that.
other cabinet members? Go ahead, Lonnie.
Well, that one, when he talked about Ron Paul, I mean, I'd almost forgotten about Ron, but because that's kind of a thing that's definitely in his wheelhouse. So, hey, stranger things have happened. I'd be jumped up and down if that was the case.
I think the whole world would be happy about that. Well, I shouldn't say the whole world. The BRICS guys would not be happy about that.
And return us to a gold standard, right? Oh my goodness. And, the things that were getting my attention, just in league with everything we're talking about, is we're talking about the women who will not be named, but I was amazed that the individuals that had stepped up, and would they continue to be as boisterous as they were, had the election went a different way. And one of the things I didn't understand, and I had folks pull my coattail, is Janet Jackson was not a big fan of She Who Will Not Be Named at all, and had no problem saying so.
Yep.
And I didn't understand that back when her brother was going through everything he was going through, the woman who will not be named was sitting in office.
The DA's office. Yeah.
Yep. And I went, oh, that's
No,
where
not
that
DA.
comes
The
from.
Attorney General's office. The Attorney General of
Attorney
California.
General. Yeah.
Attorney General, yeah.
California.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, was throwing huge rocks. So the other thing was
That
the
makes sense. I
comedian.
did not realize that, but now that you put the ties tied all
Oh
together.
yeah, I just somebody smarter than me pulled my coattail, and I went, oh yeah, I've forgotten about that. So that is why she stood her ground and didn't make any difference. Oh, and then she's got enough money where she's not worried about being out in
Yeah.
the street if folks decide they want to ignore her. But she spoke up, and thank God that she did. These comedians, and comedians I've always said are kind of like loose lip prophets in a way because they talk about things that other people won't talk about. And the way these comedians went after she who will not be named and called out, and Eddie Griffin for one. And Eddie Griffin is round the way from the hood kind of a black comedian. But he's got a YouTube channel where he's throwing great big old basketball size rocks at our platform. And he was doing that prior to the election and has been doing it since then. So
Wow.
if she runs for office in California, I don't think these individuals are going to stop.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they'll come out of the woodwork in a major way. I mean, because Janet Jackson has a lot of sway. If she had actually come out and done some sort of an announcement, I think it would have had a lot of sway in California.
Yes, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll mention this. I had a chance to meet one of the Jacksons in DC some years ago, Marlon Jackson. so I turned into a 10-year-old. I was starstruck. I said, man, I don't mean to get starstruck, but you realize he's all, come on, man, stand next to me. Let's get this done. But yeah, I was amazed by that. And then Judge Joe Brown was the other individual that he's been fearless, absolutely fearless. And because he knows all the backroom stuff that was going on, because he was, either he was a judge at that time, and then certainly got involved in the TV shows. But back at the time that she was in office, and whatever flavor, either AG or other positions that she's held, he was there, and so he knows about everything, and has been just chirping away, and knew her father.
Yeah.
That's what.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he mentions that. He mentioned that in one of his interviews. Yeah.
And the fact that, he's not saying he's black, so, and we know her mom's not saying she's black, and Kevin has covered that ad nauseum in his commentary on TikTok. So it's yeah, and folks, I'm happy for several reasons. People are listening, so when they tried to cut off, because I'm still getting a tremendous amount of well, not cut back, but censorship on Facebook. TikTok is doing it as well, but not the way Facebook was doing it. So the message is still getting out. It's still getting out. And I can't tell how many times I stopped trying to count how many individuals who have a darker paint job that are chiming in and talking about what they see that aligns with what we're talking about here on our platform here. And it's truly exciting. And I guess we need to pop our own collars for saying, hey, we were doing it back before it was fashionable. It's not nice to see now that people are chiming in and speaking up.
Mm-hmm. Good. Let's get back to our cabinet members, shall we?
Oh, by the way, the name of the author is Kevin Freeman, Pirate Money.
Oh.
If you haven't read that book, it's really good.
Yeah.
It's called Discovering the Founder's Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Kevin Freeman. Good guy. I've met him. So is Kevin. So, cabinet members, sorry, over to you.
Health and Human Services making a big stink. Doge.
Yeah.
Making a big.
So,
where do you want to start? I mean, there's so many juicy things to talk about.
I'll let you go because I've got quite a lot of thoughts on this. So.
Yeah, so let's start with what we can expect from Trump day one because of the direction that we could see him taking with his cabinet members. Day one, he is going to end the assault on our children, and he's going to make it a crime. He's telling teachers and public educators, you cannot defile our children, they're school-age children, with these notions of, the trans stuff and grotesque sex education, or you will be, your school will be defunded from federal funds, and you will be held liable as a teacher or as a school district for child, some kind of child crime. I don't know if that's he defined it, but day one he said that ends. So that's huge for parents, because a lot of parents have felt put upon by the curriculum surrounding these things within their existing public school system, the school district. And so now that ends day one. So he hasn't named a Secretary of Education yet. I'm looking forward to that. Number two, day one, he's ending the censorship. So the censorship we get on all of these platforms, and the lack of the ability to have First Amendment free speech. If we misgender somebody, they can cancel you, they could censor you, they could shadow ban you. He says day one, all social media platforms will be held accountable for any and all censorship, shadow banning, cancellations, and all of that. And we, the people, get a chance to hold them accountable by way of even as much as lawsuits. We'll have the ability to sue them for
How do you even implement that?
well, so he's going to put guidelines. I don't know. I don't know whether he's going to have the
so
social medias or whatever, but he's going to put guidelines in place that returns the power back to us to be able to take accountability and control back, from the social media companies, and then hold them accountable.
But it's
for
their platform.
So so let me explain. Let me give you the background.
Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
So here's the thing. If you are an independent platform and I publish a newspaper, the government can't touch me because I have freedom of speech. But if I publish something that results in damage to somebody, I can be held for liable, right? In which case you can sue me because I published something that was incorrect or false. So let's get to Facebook or YouTube or whatever. Facebook and YouTube says, no, we are not that way. We are a public platform. What we publish is not our doing. It's just the public's. We're just the venue, right? It's like satellite TV. We're just a satellite TV. We deliver the content, but the actual channels, you can go sue those guys individually. So if they publish something that's wrong, it's not our fault, it's their fault. So this is the Title 20 carve out. And so they said, okay, as long as you're a public service provider, you will not be held liable for individual content. But then they went in and they started screening the content. Well, if you're screening the content, you're not a public service provider. You are a publisher of a platform. So what Trump is saying, and Biden let them have we were talking about this before, but Trump says, no, pick. Either you're going to let everybody publish what they want and you just screen for pornography and certain things, or you are a newspaper, right? Or a channel. In which case, if you put libel on there, you're going to get sued. So pick one, guys. You can't do both. If you start doing this, we're going to come after you this. So basically, if they start censoring you, and then somebody slips by a libelous channel or something, from what I understand, then you can go and sue them for that, because before they were immune from that, but now they're not immune anymore.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's happening day one. The other thing that's going to happen day one is going to really alleviate us all from this, is he is sending back these millions of invaders that have come through our southern border, unaccounted for, unfettered. And so that's the immediate impact of that is our local economies will see an uplift, because so many of those jobs right now, when they come through now, not only do they get, EBT cards and this and that, but they also get work permits. So they're able to work. So a lot of them have been taking these first job type jobs from our youth who normally, go to McDonald's or whatever and get their first job.
And not declaring them.
Yeah, and not declaring them.
They've been giving false social security numbers, so they're getting Well, one, they're not paying taxes, and two, they're taking from the welfare because it shows on paper that they're under the income range where they need welfare. So they're doing two bad
So
things.
these are the types of benefits immediately that our local economy is going to get, and we'll see a reduction in crime because right now crime is through the roof because so many of these undocumented people come here. They really have nothing else to do. They're being paid $4,000 a month to stay wherever they're going to stay, and they're getting free food and all this other kind of stuff, free health services. And so when we start sending these folks back, that's going to alleviate the criminality because now we don't have people just hanging out and doing crimes. And with our cashless bail system in most of these large metropolitan areas, they get let out right when they do the crime. They get let out the same day, so there's really no consequence for them. So they just keep doing it.
It's a moral
So
hazard.
yeah, so now we'll be able to send them back, and if they want to apply to come back because they have a legitimate asylum claim, they can apply to come back. But bottom line is he's going to do all of this stuff they want. So the reason why we were so ecstatic, or you should be ecstatic, you should be joyful, is because these things will be alleviated right now up front. We won't have to endure, the globalist threat. We don't have to endure additional inflation because that's going to come down. We don't have to endure additional crime. We don't have to endure our kids being, continue to be brainwashed. These are things we'll get immediate control right when he gets back in office day one. So those things we should be expecting and joyful about.
And then one thing that we should, because one of the rebuttals we're going to get is, well, who's going to, all your lettuce prices and your cabbage prices are going to go through the roof because there's nobody there to work those systems. Well, what they don't understand is for decades, we've had a work program where you can
Yes.
get a work visa. You come in for about 3 to 4 months, you work, and then you return it. And guess what? We're taxing you on that. You're not eligible for welfare. You're not eligible for all the free stuff. But you're working here as a laborer from another country. Now, at some point, if the U.S. decides to reward those people who work really hard, some of them work really hard, and we want them in the economy because they're hardworking and they don't, they're not parasites in any sense of the word. We want people to come in, then it's fine. So it's not that we're canceling. What we're canceling is the illegal immigrant or the illegal alien. I don't even want to use the word immigrant
Right.
because they're not immigrants, they're aliens. The illegal aliens who come in here, take advantage of the system, and there's a moral hazard because we don't know who they are, we don't know what they are, and as we mentioned in one of our articles, is if they go kill somebody or rape somebody, they can say, "Well, I'm leaving, I'm going home," and guess what? You'll never find me because I don't have relatives here, I don't have anybody here, I don't have a history here, I didn't go to high school here. I'm leaving. Right? There's no vested person.
Got it. Got it. So those are day one issues or things that are going to we're going to see implemented. Can he return the funds back to the states for education? What does that look like when we've heard him talk about revamping the Department of Education and returning the funds back to the states? Why should people be excited about that? What does that do for a community?
I don't know the exact how he's going to do that. I think it's a brilliant idea, though, because having a federal mandate from Washington, D.C. for all public schools across the country, and we have that one enclave making decisions for all, school and education standards, it seems, out of kilter. So
Well, it's too
having
much
your
power. It's too much power in the hands of too few, right?
Yeah, too few, and having your educational standards closer to home, where you could, then manage that accordingly, would be
And
better. Now, the
and
other thing
worse,
is that he's doing
they're unelected,
is,
right? Those people are
yeah,
unelected.
and those are unelected and bureaucrats in DC and not in your local state or your school board or whatever. The other thing that he's going to do, though, that's going to really stop the sexualization of our children and stop the genders sharing showers and bathrooms, is going to stop because he says, look, you're not going to get any of those funds. when we take the funds from the Department of Education and DC, and we give it back to the states, any of those states or districts within those states that continue to brainwash our children and allow these trans surgeries and all of this kind of stuff continue to go on, we're not going to send you any federal funds. So literally, some of these school districts, if they want to continue this, they're going to go bankrupt. So that's the way to do it. I mean, so they will comply. They'll stop the trans show hours or whatever, the library hours or whatever they bring.
The storytelling, transgender storytelling, whatever.
All of that's going to stop. And yeah.
Well, one thing we need to do is we want to destroy the Department of Education. It's a legislative action. He's got to pass a law saying the Department of Education will no longer survive. He can defund it himself, but if you want the next president to also not have a Department of Education, they have to go to the legislature and close it. The Department of Education was started by Jimmy Carter through legislation, and so it needs to be undone through legislation if you want to undo it for other people. And when they see the damage this has done to have, as we said, a group of unelected elites running the country or brainwashing our kids, it's definitely a danger. Now, most of us believe that government schools are dangerous any way you look at it. But until we can come up with a viable alternative, because we've killed all the other alternatives so far, we are stuck with it.
Yes, if the oversight is localized as opposed to being federal, then the communities can have sway and determine who's the school board president, who's the principals, and hopefully they can stop this trend that's taking place where you've got cross-dressing teachers, male teachers in dresses and all that other kind of foolishness in the classrooms, and they're allowing them to do that.
And to be fair, these schools were never supposed to be run by the state either. They were supposed to be run by the county. They're all supposed to be run at the county level, not at the state level. It's only Gavin Newsom who has decided that he's going to go in and shut down school boards' authorities in many cases because he wants to force from the state level onwards what's going on. And mainly because of what happened in Chino Hills with Jack Hibbs. They took over the entire school board. They got rid of all the pornography in the school, all the transgender stuff. Newsom was like, we can't have this. I want to pass a law reining in all the school boards so that we have control of the school boards. Well, I want to see how far that flies, right? But again, California is crazy, so who knows where it'll go.
Do you think that this would help those urban schools who buildings are falling apart? They don't have textbooks. I mean, the urban parent in the poor community that has really terrible school systems, if they were to bring it back down to the state and even to the county level, is there a benefit? Is there a result that could really be tangible for those families?
It depends on the community, right? If that community is not involved in the elections, then no. If the community is involved in those elections and are making those decisions at the county level, then yes, absolutely. The question is, when urban schools, we're talking about like a New York or something, where the entire population of the state's in two cities, right? So do they have much sway about the rich parts of town versus the low parts of town? That almost has to be something that's done not even county by county, almost precinct by precinct. I don't know the answer to that, but I would say that it probably will not help. And again, remember, the problem with schools, public schools, is not money. Most of them have plenty of money. It's that they waste money.
They waste money.
I mean, look at California. It's like one of the lowest educational systems in the country, and yet they're spending, something like $13,000 to $17,000 per student? I mean, my goodness.
I think it's $18,000 to $20,000 a student. So what he's also saying is that private schools and charter schools will have the ability to compete for those funds.
Yeah.
But also what he's saying is educational standards must show an increase I don't know whether it's year over year or every 5 years. I don't know what the standard is going to be. But in other words, he's saying right now we're at the baseline low, 17% literacy rate for graduating students.
Yeah.
Um, and so he's saying, look, going forward, we're going to hold all schools who get these federal funds after we sort of uncouple them from this Department of Education and make them available, are going to be held to a standard, which is wonderful. I mean, everybody should win on this. You got public schools, charter schools, homeschool pods. He said homeschool networks will also get a chance to get those, as long as you can demonstrate that the children are learning, that they're not being sexualized, that they're not being brainwashed into other trans ideologies and everything else, but they're actually making progress with their fundamentals, reading, writing, and arithmetic. They'll have access to those funds. And so that's a good thing, because now we stop really what schools stopped doing was they stopped critical thinking, and they went into social engineering. So they're getting the children, instead of having them critically think about how to solve problems or whether this is right or wrong or those types of things, they're having them think just socially, horizontally, socially. How do you get along with this community? How do you become part of the collective, make everybody happy? Socially, does this make sense or that makes sense? As opposed to, the real stuff that children are supposed to go to school for.
Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to destroy a country, I would start with the school to kill children, right? And that's what they did.
Yep.
I want to talk quickly about health and human services.
Yes, that was going to be my topic.
So let me jump in here. So RFK is going to lead that. And my wife was joking about, if you want to get that red dye number or whatever it is, you better go get it now because he's going to ban it. I said, well, here's what my hope is. My hope actually is that we don't ban these things.
Yeah.
But what the government has to do, because you should be able to make a choice of what you want to do. If you want to put poison in yourself, you should make a choice. But what the government has to do is they have to get out of the business of recommending things. It's because, remember, the food pyramid was never forced on us by the government, but it was recommended by the government. So who wants to go against the government? So everybody went according to the food pyramid, and we know that the food pyramid is why we have obesity in America. If it wasn't for the food pyramid, we would not have obesity. They created the obesity by the lies of the food pyramid. Who was funding the food pyramid? Well, it was the sugar industry, right? So we said, the sugar industry came out and said fat was bad, sugar was good. So guess what? We have obesity. But before that, you go back to the 60s, and before that, when fat was the good thing, everybody had lots of butter and lots of bacon and all that. You can't find a fat person, right? I remember looking at videos from, not videos, but movies, home movies that dated way back to the 60s and the 50s on the beach. There's not a single fat person on the beach.
Wow.
Right? And I see videos of boys in training at the age of 13, 14. They're doing single-handed, they're walking across bars, and they have all these things that we do in high school. Why? Well, the FDA has to get out of the food of the recommendation. What you have to do is you have to have multiple groups that recommend what they want, and if they're wrong, we get to sue them. We get to go after them.
Yeah.
But you can't sue the government. So you want all the government to get out of that business completely and allow you to sue people who do the wrong or who give you bad advice. That's all it has to be, right? I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same reason why we don't want the government telling the doctors what they can and can't prescribe. If the doctor kills you or hurts you when they prescribe something, you should be able to sue the doctor. And so every doctor is like, I better do all my own research. But now the doctor can say, no, the government said it was okay. Well, how can you sue me? I just went by what the government does. No, I want you to have skin in the game, Mr. Doctor. I want you to fear that you are going to get bad medicine.
And RFK is going to bring all that back. So he's going to restore the power, not only the knowledge to know what's in the bad pharmaceuticals, like bad vaccines and this and that, but the power to then not have to succumb to a government mandate for vaccines, child vaccines, different
Sure.
types of prescriptions and
Yeah.
those types of things. It was restoring individual, based on your individual circumstance, you may not want to partake in this or that.
And the
I
evidence shows
remember
that.
hearing something. I was going to say, just to the bad vaccines, I remember hearing that before we mandated a lot of these child vaccines, we didn't have ADHD like we do
Right.
now. Some of the issues that our children are facing, if we go back, a couple of decades before we had to submit our children to all those vaccines before they could get in school, we didn't have some of the behavioral issues in school like we do now. That's all I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, vaccines, fluoride in the water. I mean, you can go through the whole gamut of things that the government has mandated, and you can't sue the government for. So it's a moral hazard. The government can't be wrong. They can say anything they want, and I'm the government. You can't come after me. And then worse, you
fluoride
get
in
the
the
minions
water.
who enforce it, right? So I'm sorry, go
Right.
ahead.
Mhm.
Remember fluoride in the water, and they said it was because it was protect against tooth decay.
Yeah, against
I
enamel
remember
decay.
hearing years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And India came out with a study that said it's the worst thing you can do for your kids. Maybe that's why the
Yeah.
Indians are so much smarter than the average American. No, I'm just
And,
kidding.
And
I disabuse people of that in my book. I say they aren't. But the point is,
and that's why they're so good looking, right, Neil?
yeah, that too.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. That's funny. We have only a few minutes left. Is there any other cabinet positions or things you guys are excited about, shocked you, as far as who's being appointed? I know we want to hear about education, and we want to hear who's going to be, was it commerce or banking? Who's the
Treasury.
one that you wanted? Treasury,
Treasury,
treasury.
treasury.
So we're waiting on treasury, waiting on education. Um, who's overseeing what's going on with the IRS and stuff? Who's that?
Oh,
Who would
That's
that person
treasury.
be?
Treasury.
Yeah, that's
That
treasury.
is treasury. Oh, okay.
Let's talk about the
Ooh.
treasury real quick in the last few moments. So, are
Mm.
you familiar with the Johnson Amendment? Johnson Amendment was passed by Lyndon
oh yeah.
Johnson back in '58, I think,
No.
when he was still a senator in Texas. And basically, what it says is that if you have a nonprofit, you can't get involved politically. Right now, nobody's ever been sued for this. This is what all the pastors claim. Oh, I'm a nonprofit. So I actually have a law that I've written up, and I'll send it to you. That is a repeal of the Johnson Amendment,
Amen.
right?
Mm.
Because it's one thing to say, "Oh, we hate the Johnson Amendment. We shouldn't enforce it," but it's another thing to throw out the Johnson Amendment. Because I guarantee you, first of all, the Johnson Amendment is not constitutionally valid. There's
Not
a freedom of speech.
constitutional.
You don't lose your freedom of speech just because you take a tax cut. Because just because I have a
Yeah.
tax break doesn't mean I lose my freedom of speech, right? That is nonsense. In fact, it violates every principle, right? You don't become apolitical the minute you become religious. So this is nonsense. So they've got to get rid of that, and it's called a repeal. And it also states how we are churches are expected to get involved politically because all our moral values come from the laws of nature, and nature's God.
Amen.
Now, I don't think we can codify that because that'd be hard to get through, but we can codify everything around it.
Yeah. What's
Okay.
the name of there's a day in the year, and I forgot what organization started
Tax
it.
Freedom Day.
Where
Oh, yeah, Pulpit Freedom Sunday.
yes,
Yes.
and it's where they because there's no church that's ever been
Yeah.
had
Alliance
anything
Defending
come
Freedom.
against.
Yeah.
Yes, ADF. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's designed to say, okay, I'm going to talk what I want to talk about from the pulpit. Come get me, and they've never come because they don't want to climb that fence. And
Because the
but the
IRS knows
Johnson
they'll
Amendment,
lose it. The minute it goes to the
yeah,
Supreme Court, they know they'll lose. And so it's better for people to be afraid of something than to know it's not. So nobody has ever been prosecuted under that law. I think there was one church that started to be prosecuted, and I don't think they ever paid any penalties or fines or anything. But it's called Pulpit Freedom Sunday. It's one
pulpit
Sunday. I
freedom.
don't know what day it is. And I think they have about 1,500 to 2,000 pastors around the United States that preach a very political sermon. And I think they even endorse candidates. And then they copy their video and they mail it to the IRS.
Yeah.
And none of them, over 20,000 opportunities for the IRS to come after the people, and they've never done it. So you tell me why we're afraid of them. Well, the point is we got to destroy the legislation because it's unconstitutional and immoral.
Okay. Very
Talking about
good.
the IRS.
Interesting conversation. Interesting talks today. We're going to end it here. We'll be back again. Please make sure that you share this with some of your friends and on your profile, and be looking to hear great things that are coming from us. We're excited about 2025 and what we'll be producing for you to be involved. So everyone, please have a blessed